Hey, it's Janet Leonard with Virtual Instructor, and it's nice to have y'all here. Today, I'm actually using a different platform for doing my live broadcast. So bear with me. It's a little new. It's been around. It's called StreamYard, and I'm actually really impressed with it so far. So we're going to talk today about Excel pivot tables. So I'm going to do a little teeny bit of some background information on Virtual Instructor. And if you like these lives, I'm doing this every Monday at 11 o'clock. So if you want to see our schedule, just go to virtualinstructor.com and you'll click on the Monday live. And just so you know what's coming up, we are next week, we're going to talk about a new app. It's actually, you download it on your Mac or your PC, and it's called and it's really cool for making videos, and you can also change your Zoom backgrounds and stuff like that. So I'll do a little talk on that for you. And you may or may not be aware of this, but if you're a Windows user, Microsoft is coming out and they're actually going to launch their new Windows 365 on August 2nd. And Windows 365 is supposed to let you use Windows and your programs on any device, and you can start, say, on your iPad, you can switch back over to your laptop, go back over to your phone. So I'm going to be talking about that. And then on August 16th, I'll be talking about the drawing tables feature that is found in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. So enough about that. I'm going to go ahead and we'll pop into Excel. So I'm going to show you how to use pivot tables. Now, a pivot table, a lot of people are afraid of pivot tables. They think, oh, they're so difficult, but they're not. Now, you can get more advanced and do some phenomenal analysis of data, but I'm going to show you how incredibly easy it is to analyze a large amount of data just using a pivot table. So here's a little sample of a spreadsheet that I've set up, and it basically has three types of tours: cruises, walking tours, and biking tours. And I'm just going to go ahead and click over in cell A1. And I don't know if you know about this little keyboard shortcut, but on the PC, you just hold down the control key and tap the down arrow key. And on a Mac, you hold down the command key and tap the down arrow key. So I'm just going to go down, and you can see that we have over 2,700 rows of data. Now, if I want it, I'm just going to go back to the top. So I'll just do control or command and the up arrow key. And then that goes to the top or the bottom of a block of data. So you might already have guessed, if you did command or control and the right arrow key, which I'll do right now, it takes you to the last column in the block of data. And in this case, we have over to column W. So that means we have a pretty big block of data to analyze. Now, we're not interested in looking at all this, but I really would like to know, based on the year, and then I'd like to know based on the type of tour, and then the start country, I'd like to know how many people are in these different tours. Now, that would probably take quite a while if you're trying to do it yourself and just go through the data. But let me show you how easy it is to do this with pivot tables. So all you have to do is be somewhere in the block of data, and then you go up to the Insert tab. And when you click on the Insert tab, then it brings up that rib or that tab. And then way over at the far left, you'll see Pivot Table. So you just click on that, and it brings up a little dialog box for you. Now, I'm going to suggest that most of the time, especially if you're starting out, that you just use the default. So the default is select a table or range, which it already knows the range because we're inside of it. And then we're going to create a new worksheet based off this data. Now, the only little thing I'm going to tell you is when you start working with pivot tables, you start to end up with a lot of extra sheets. So you might want to name them as you're going along, because otherwise you get like a sheet 2 and sheet 3 and sheet 4. And sometimes it's a little difficult to kind of understand what's going on or keep track of which sheet you're in. All right, so I'm just going to keep the default, and all I have to do is choose OK. And notice I have a new sheet here. Now, what happens is, and I can name this, so I'll go ahead and name it, and I'll just be really creative and call it Pivot Table. You can call it anything you want. And what I want you to notice, though, is this area over at the left is where we actually build the pivot table. And over at the right, where it says PivotTable Fields, these are the column headings that we had in the original data. And so remember I said I'm interested in seeing this information by a date. So I wanted to deal with the start date. So all I have to do is click on the check for the start date and watch. It's going to automatically put it down in this little row area. So I'll click and there it does. Now, since it's a date, Excel automatically gives us the years, the quarters, and the actual start date. But if you notice over in the pivot table area, notice that it's already brought this stuff in. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. So we'll see if this will make it a little easier to see our data. Well, apparently, remember I'm new to this. Let's just see if I can get back over there. There we go. Now I'll get it bigger. There we go. Still learning this new system, but I'm really liking StreamYard. All right, now that you can see it, I've got the different years and there's a little plus sign. So all I have to do is click on that and notice that in this case, it comes up with fourth quarter. Well, that's what that's telling me is that any tours that are booked are all within the fourth quarter of 2021. But I can click the little plus sign, and when I do that, it expands it and it says, okay, yes, they're in the quarter of 2021 and they're only in the month of November or December. And then I could go over to 2022 and I see, oh, these have tours that are in the first quarter and the fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter is expanded December and I can expand the first quarter. Okay, now that's more information than I really want. I just want to know the year. So all I have to do is go back over to the rows area and you see where it has quarters. I'm just going to click and hold the mouse button and watch as I drag it in, you get like a little X. So I just let go of the mouse and it's not going to be in my pivot table anymore. And I'll do the same thing with the start date. I'll just drag it in because really all I care about are the years right now. So that was pretty darn easy. Now, the next thing I'd like to know is the different types of tours. So I go back over and I look at my different column headings or my pivot fields, and I'm going to click on tour type. And it automatically puts it down in the rows. Now, just so you know, if the column that you're working with is a number, then by default, Excel's going to assume that it should add it up. And you can do other things. You can average it. You can do a whole variety of things. And then that would go into the value section. But because tour type is text, it said, hey, I'm just guessing you want it in the rows. And look at that. It automatically in the 2021 now shows me when I have it expanded, biking tour, cruising, and walking tour. Same thing under 2022. And I'm not going to open up all the other ones. I think you can kind of figure that one out. So that's kind of neat. And then the next thing I was interested in was knowing, okay, where are these tours starting? So then I come on back over here and I actually have a start country. I'll scroll down a teeny bit. So see all these fields I can work with? So I'm going to go over to start country. I'll put a check. And again, by default, it assumes I want it down in the rows. So now I can see where these biking tours and cruises and so forth are starting. But you know what? I'd rather have the countries going across rather than down. So all I have to do is move over to the start country, click and hold, and then I'm just going to drag it on over to the columns. And when I do that, now it's put the columns or the countries over, kind of going across with my columns. Then if I want them to kind of be the same size, just like you would do in regular Excel, you can just highlight, and you got to go up in the heading area to make this little trick work. Highlight the columns you want, and then just double click on any of them. Actually, I lied. Sorry about that. Just drag it out a teeny bit and they'll make them all about the same size. So I'm just going to drag it out a little bit more. And I think I like that size. All right, now I'm just going to click anywhere inside the pivot table. So that's pretty darn fast figuring all this out. And now the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to add up, I want to know all the people that have been booked for these different tours. So then again, all I have to do is go back and find the field I want, and mine is called number of people. Now this happens to have numbers in it, so watch, it's going to throw it down in the value area. So I'll click on number of people. Now it's thrown it down, and That was pretty darn fast to analyze that large amount of data and come up with all this information. Now, there's a lot more to pivot tables, and obviously I can't show it to you in about 15 minutes. And I will let you know later on, we do have classes on this. So if you say, hey, this looks pretty darn good, we actually have 2 one-hour classes. We have the basic pivot tables, which is this plus a lot more. And then we have the advanced, which take it to the next level. So, but I want to show you something kind of neat. Because aside from this being incredibly fast, what if you were looking at this and you were thinking, I see I have 130 people that are in Canada. And by the way, we could also select this. I'll just select these, and maybe we decide we want it centered. So then I'll just go center, so it's a little easier to read. So most of the formatting tricks that you know about, you can apply to the pivot tables. All right, so back over here in Canada, we see we have 130 people that are doing a cruise in 2021. So what if you're thinking, well, that's great, but I kind of need to know the detail about that. Well, this is the beauty of a pivot table, is anything that is analyzed, you can move on to that cell and just double click. So watch what happens. I'll double click and it opens up another sheet and it gives me all the records that it found in my original block of data. Remember that, over 2,700 records, and it shows me all the information for the people that met, or the records that met the criteria I set up for that pivot table. So this is where you may want to start naming these. So I'm going to double click where it says sheet name, and I'm going to call it 2021 Cruise Canada. Okay, so I can remember what it is, because I'll go back over to the pivot table. And then maybe I'm curious, 2025, what's going on there? And maybe I see that there's a walking tour out of France. So I want to see that detail. So that's the 2025 walking tour France. I'll double click, look at all the details I have there. But again, see, it calls it sheet 3 now. So if you don't take the time to rename them, that can get a little confusing. So I'm going to put 2025 walking tour France. Okay. All righty. So I'll go back over to pivot tables. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how incredibly easy it is to do pivot tables. Like I said, there's more to it, but this may be all you need to get started, and it will get you comfortable with it. So just a quick little recap for you is I'll go back over to tour data. And remember, this was just a big block of data. We had all these columns. I just happened to highlight them in blue, the ones we were going to focus on. And remember, this was a large amount of data. And then all we did was we went back up to the Insert tab up at the top, and then we went over to Pivot Table and we created our pivot table. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint just for a second. And in case you are interested, we actually do provide live 1-hour classes. They're hands-on with a real instructor. You get a training guide. You'll work around with class files. You can ask questions if you get stuck. So we have 2 classes for Excel PivotTable 404. So that's this plus quite a bit more to make you feel real comfortable with this. And then if you decide that you really like pivot tables and you want to take them to the next level, we actually have another 1-hour class with a live instructor. And it is, excuse me, it is in August. We have 2 different August classes there, and it's the Excel 405. Alrighty, well, thank you so much for watching this video quick tip. And I just have one more thing to share with you. I'll just go back to the slide so it looks a little prettier. And just in case you are interested in our other Monday lives, I'm doing this every Monday at 11 o'clock for 15, 20 minutes max, just to give you a cool tip or trick for the week that maybe you can apply. And our motto is you should reclaim your valuable time. You know, it's great using the software tools, but you don't want to spend hours doing something that should only take a few minutes. So that's the whole purpose of our live tips for you. All right, so next week I'm going to talk about a fun app. It's free, and of course I have a paid version as well, but it's pretty darn cool, and it is actually called So it's got a lot of humor too. I think it's a lot of fun. And if you are a Windows user and you're interested in the new upcoming Windows 365, that is released next week, but I will then do a lot of research, and I should have the new Windows 365 to demo, so I can at least show you what that is. And then on August 16th, if you ever deal with tables but don't want just strict tables, you want to kind of customize them, they have a drawing feature that's available in Microsoft Office in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and it makes it super fast for you to create nice custom tables. So I'll demonstrate that. Thank you so much for attending today's Monday Live. Now, I also will be broadcasting live on LinkedIn next week as well. So I'll be broadcasting live on Facebook, on YouTube, and then next week we'll be on LinkedIn. Have a great rest of your day and hope to see you. Oh, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, if you don't want to miss out, you want a little reminder, you can fill in your name and email address and we'll just send you a reminder about an hour before each of the classes, and then or each of the Mondays. And then I'll also send out a little follow-up with a brief overview of what we covered that week. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your week and hope to see you next Monday. Bye.